Contrary to popular understanding and belief, your company's messaging, your point of view, your IP, the way that you think is not your website copy. It is not your blog article content. And here's why.
Welcome back to Endless Customers. I'm your host, Alex Winter, and today we are joined by Tom DiScipio. He's a managing partner. And what else do you do here at Impact? Everything?
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, I think, right?
Yeah, dabble here and there.
Yeah. Great to see you. Thanks for being back on the show.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I love being at the table. You know that.
Yes. We love having you at the table. You always provide great insights. Your episodes always crush it. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the topic for today. What does clear messaging actually mean? I think a lot of people talk about this and they still don't get it right. So why does it matter so much for companies, and why should they really focus on clear messaging?
Yeah, we're going to go into this black box today, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, clear messaging right next to sales enablement, whatever that means.
Synergy.
Yeah, synergy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of folks have their own definition of what clear messaging looks like, but for me, it's very specific. It's the crossroads between two different frameworks that I've always leaned into and follow. The first of which is Donald Miller's story brand, which we've talked about a lot, I think, on the podcast and just generally through all of our content.
Yeah, we love Donald Miller here.
Which is really about story and narration and making the customer your hero.
Yeah.
The other piece of it that I like to have there as a structure for all of this is Pep Loggia, who is the founder of CXL and Spiro and Winter. Built a messaging framework called the B2B messaging framework, which creates a structure for how people want to consume information and what needs to be a part of that information. And so when I say crossroads of those two things, it's clear messaging for me is creating the right structure and flow for that information, while also including story and narration, which is how humans have passed things along over the years and how we best absorb information through that.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it's like a mix of being direct and then also the psychology behind like how you speak to your preferred audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And clear messaging, when it happens, you create resonance with the people that are reading this messaging, right? Resonance and understanding and validation.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So Impact has made a really big shift from They Ask You Answer, which is an excellent book by Marcus Sheridan and a very nice framework for a lot of businesses. It's helped a lot of companies out there, but we've shifted more towards this endless customers model. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about clear messaging and how we went from They Ask You Answer to endless customers and that sort of evolution?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there and the biggest thing that's changed over the course of that time is, we all know it, it's AI, right? And so prior to AI, we had two audiences we were serving with our messaging. Mm-hmm. We had our end user, or our ideal fit customers, one group, and we had the Google overlords as the other group. Well, now we've added this AI overlord as a third bucket or third audience that we have to address with our messaging and content.
Yeah.
And so when we think about, in my mind at least, the biggest shift from They Ask You Answer to endless customers is how do we now position our messaging and our content, by the way, are two different things, which is, we should probably talk about that in a second.
Yes.
How do you position it to address these three major audiences versus this two? And the strategies aren't necessarily all that different and the principles aren't all that different. It's just something you have to understand is now very real. And there are things that will go into it above and beyond what we've always been doing with They Ask You Answer that help you achieve that third bucket of AI.
I'm curious too, let's talk about the difference between messaging and copy and what that really means as far as like written word versus, I guess, positioning. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I wish I was smart enough to come up with this myself, but this again is from Pep Loggia. Messaging is not equal to content. And I think some businesses get this wrong where it's like we're writing stuff and that stuff is our messaging. Well, no, Your messaging is actually your point of view. And it's the things you want your customers to understand about you and about the things that you do. And it's also your IP, right? So intellectual property. It's the things that you've developed and only you've developed that you're sharing with the world, again, to align with your point of view on why you do what you do and what you believe. Content is the expression of all that. So with this underlying framework of like, take impact, for example, we believe that all your marketing should be done in-house on the digital side, content writing, videography. That's a point of view, and that's part of our messaging. And all of our content supports that messaging and is constantly tweaked using that messaging framework in the middle.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. You've worked on the sales side of the equation for a good bit. You've interfaced with a lot of potential clients and with a lot of actual clients. How does that play out when we talk about messaging? As far as like, have you seen people where like the messaging that they have has gotten in their way, almost like their IP or the way they position themselves is different than their messaging, or like it doesn't match up, and because of that, it's like hindering their ability to grow or to scale?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot, and many times it's it's hard because when you're in the thick of business and you're running your business, it's hard to sort of stop and create this messaging framework and foundation. And that's one of the other wonderful things about StoryBrand is you build what's called your brand script. And that's that point in time where you stop and you document the problem in the world that you solve, who you solve it for, and how you do it, and what you believe. And again, your point of view. And many companies sort of skip that step and they're like, we need a website or we need to update our website. Well, let's fill in our website based on everything we've learned about all the other websites that we've seen.
Right.
So if you're in the roofing industry, for example, if you've seen other roofing companies, they're like, oh, there's a free estimate button. Well, I'll put the free estimate button on my website. Or it'll say like #1 roofer in Michigan. Oh, I'll be #1 roofer in Connecticut.
Right.
It's based on what we've seen, and companies don't necessarily take that step back and say, okay, who are we? And which particular customer are we actually trying to solve for?
Mm.
And when we think about the fact that we sell roofing, well, what is it that we're actually selling? Oh, it's peace of mind. Nobody likes having roofing problems, right? That's the problem in the world that, we solve as roofers.
Yeah.
And this is all coming to me because one of our good friends and clients over at Linta Roofing, that's part of their message on their website. And it's absolutely stellar.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's why StoryBrand resonated with me so much, is because I think you're right. People tend to do it backwards. They're like, oh, it's Tom and Alex Roofing, and we're the #1 roofers in Connecticut. And it sounds great. And it seems like the go-to thing to do because it's just like almost overlooked. But you have to really think about who you're trying to talk to and how you want to talk to them first. It's almost like flipping the switch and thinking like the opposite way. So it's really less about Alex and Tom in our business and way more about helping these customers, helping people that are having issues with roofing and peace of mind. I love that you just said that, peace of mind. Yeah.
And I think some companies get caught up in we have to appease the Google overlords and we have to appease the search engine. Like, we know Google's indexing our site, so let's be super meticulous about these SEO keywords that we put on here, and we'll sound a little bit more corporate and technical. And what we have to understand is that Google's a lot smarter than we think. Like, these aren't just old school spider bots that are looking for words on your page.
Yeah.
They're trying to solve for the human, which means we need to solve for the human first. And that means we need to write in a way and message in a way that humans understand it first, and the bots will understand.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think people forget that too. You just saying that reminded me too. I think sometimes I get caught up in the Google, like, corporate, huge monstrosity of a business that's just trying to make money. And I forget that at their core, all their tech is really trying to best serve people that are searching and using their search engines. It's less about the companies and more about their users.
To make sense of the web.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And get the answer as fast as possible to a human.
Yeah. That's a great example. What else have you seen where people maybe did this wrong or didn't quite get it right?
Yeah, these are super tactical things that hopefully you can hear this and sort of go back to your website and look at it and go, oh yeah, we're a little guilty of this and we can fix it right away. So the first thing is, if I look at a company's website and I see lots of we's and ours, so we are this, we do that, we're the best.
We the best.
Well, yeah, we the best.
If you're DJ Khaleding, you're doing it wrong.
That's right. Our services, our company, our people.
Yeah.
It's very, in the nicest way, self-centered. It's about you. And frankly, most buyers are probably not going to care about that until you've explicitly stated that you can help solve their problem. That is when buyers become, okay, I understand this organization can solve my problem. Who are they? It's not to say you can't use the we's and ours anywhere on your site. You should, right? You should connect the problem with yourself. But a lot of times these businesses rely so heavily on it, and they don't realize that in that moment, they're not making the customer the hero. And that's the core principle of StoryBrand is let's make sure the customer is the hero.
Yeah. It's also a big part of Endless Customers as well. If you read the book and you know it, I know you did. I know you do.
I did read it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I've read it a few times, back to front. But it's one of those things where we talk a lot about putting the customer first and thinking about the customer first and not using we, me, us language and really trying to flip the switch and make it about them and solving problems first and helping them. Because if you think about it, if you're searching online for something, you're most likely have a problem or an issue or something that you need to solve for. And that's the bottom line. And if you're not giving people what they want, they're going to go somewhere else to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a simple tactic there is like, try to figure out ways to turn those we's and ours into you and yours.
Nice.
Like, hey, you deserve, again, going back to Linta Roofing, you deserve a roofing company that cares or that's going to solve your problems, right?
Yeah.
And now the buyer's like, yeah, I do.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point. It's got me thinking like you should just basically take all your copy on your website for everyone out there watching and listening and copy and paste it into a Google Doc and then Command F and try to find anything that says we or me or us or our and see if you can switch it up a little bit. And it might make a serious impact. Yeah.
So one other major thing I see is that companies start to spew about like product features or service features of their solution.
Yeah.
Before they educate the user on exactly what it is that they do. And that sounds like such a simple thing, but you've got 5 seconds, maybe less, to capture somebody's attention who's come to your homepage.
Right.
It's not the time to use markety, fluffy content that sounds really nice. It's the time to be insanely clear and specific about what that actually is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Really the fluff and the markety stuff should be everything that you're using to drive people to your site. But then once you get to the site, that should be where it's direct and clear and concise. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, and so maybe less of the fluff and more of like generating that excitement and that awareness. And then once somebody gets to your home base, which is your website, it's like, I know exactly what this company does. Yeah. And that's what I need.
That's the key. You need to have that aha moment. And I think too, we've experienced this when we work through our website and we constantly, as you especially, are constantly scrutinizing and analyzing and trying to optimize our website. And then just recently went through this, but it's important to take a step back and go like, pretend like you don't know anything about this company and you're seeing it for the first time. What do you need to know? What's the easiest and most direct way to say this thing so that people can get it and it makes sense? Because I think sometimes we get so entrenched in what we do that it gets too technical and we get too like focused on all these words and wordsmithing things to make it seem a certain way, and it almost has the opposite effect that we want it to.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you're also right in that I've made this mistake several times with our website, and we're still constantly tweaking it. But if y'all have been to our website anytime before the last couple of months, you would have seen on our homepage right at the top, helping businesses thrive in any economy. Sounds really good. And it's what we do. But it's not clear as to exactly what we do and how we help.
Yeah.
And so when we think about our point of view at Impact, which is helping companies take marketing in-house and create ownership over their growth. That's why we've moved to this new initial headline of take control of your company's growth. That's exactly what you should do. And it doesn't say we help you take control of your company's growth. It's saying it to you.
Right.
And so directly under that, we have a very clear statement of, we help companies generate more customers from their website, content, and sales activities.
Through coaching and training.
Through coaching and training.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Very, very straightforward. I had to bring that up because I love the evolution and where we've taken it. And I think you did an excellent job with that. And I think it just goes to show you exactly what we're talking about and how important it is. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So are there any other problems that you see that happen or any other experiences you've seen where people didn't quite get this right?
Yeah, it's
The list is just...
the list goes on, guys. If you can see me looking at my screen here, I'm not going to go through all of them, but one other one I will say that Marcus talks a lot about from stage and within the book as well is weaving in this idea of storytelling and narration. And now this goes beyond the homepage of your website. This is where you look at your blog articles and your service pages. And it's easy for an AI bot. You could ask it to write you a couple paragraphs about something you want to teach your customers. Again, we'll use roofing example. We might say, go to ChatGPT and say, help me write an article about how much a roof costs in whatever state. But the idea of weaving in storytelling and narration into that and personal experiences is that you're doing things that the AI can't actually do. And so you're creating this level of differentiation and personalization and relatability for the user.
Yeah.
And that's all part of your messaging because whatever stories you're telling should, again, tie back to your point of view and your IP.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'll stop there.
Well, and I might be biased because I come out of filmmaking and telling stories, and I've always been passionate about that. But I think that's something that connects us all. And you said that earlier, that like from the beginning of time, history has been passed on through storytelling. So if you can tell a compelling story that people can connect with and that people can relate to, it's super powerful. That's probably the most powerful tool that you have in your toolbox.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so long as it's connected to this layer of clarity and structure, which can guide the user between these two things of story and clarity.
Nice. So we talked about what happens when people miss the mark with this type of clarity and making sure your messaging is on point. What happens when people do get it right? And what does it do for businesses when they take the time to hash this out, get their messaging very clear and direct, and then what are the results? Like what do you typically see happen?
Yeah. There's a number of things that happen. And the key thing I want to start with here is that when you document this type of stuff, like a brand script, and you have this level of understanding around what your point of view is and your messaging framework essentially for your business, it becomes, to steal some of Marcus's words here, it becomes shared doctrine. So the way that I would talk about impact in our services ideally is the same way that you would, is the same way that Austin would behind this camera right here. And we develop, we look at our homepage and say, yep, that's who we are. And now we communicate that way publicly. And you've created this shared doctrine.
Yeah. It does make sense. And it is important because I feel like we do a lot of events and we do a lot of networking and things in the community. And I feel like it would be disjointed if you were having a conversation 10 feet away from me with somebody and talking about our company, or we're talking about our products and services, and I'm saying it in a completely different way than you're saying it. And to me, that just doesn't seem like a company that would be buttoned up. And that's why this is so important to try to get. Right. And it doesn't have to be a script that we like are robots of reading it word for word, but like there should be very key points that are consistent across that messaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing too, is we're talking a lot about messaging for customers, but guess what? Your employees can be confused if your messaging is not clear.
So internally with your team. Okay.
With your team.
That's a good point.
Because it negates everything we just talked about, the shared doctrine. And you have this situation where a salesperson might be sitting at their desk and they get this question from a buyer of like, hey, what do you guys do? And maybe they freeze. Maybe they say the wrong thing. Maybe
Right.
Maybe it's not as compelling to the person because they haven't stated it in a way that makes it so compelling. So, and I can tell you again, like, hey, we have had this problem at Impact in the past, but luckily we have a book that we can align the entire organization around, and the key set of principles and the messaging framework and all that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always that way. And so
No, it's an evolution and it takes time.
it's evolution, it takes time. And just remember that when you're creating clarity for your customers, you're creating clarity for your employees.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, we talked about this too, and it goes back to the storytelling piece. But the reason why people connect to those things, in my opinion, and in my sales experience, is because people make buying decisions based off of emotions, not based off of logic. Obviously, there's some logic in it. You have to think about what you want to do to make sure that it's the right decision. But usually when I buy things, it's because I love it and I want it and I have to have it. And sometimes logic, especially for guitars and certain purchases and watches, the logic goes out the window and it's all hard and it's all emotion just because there's like a passion there. So can we talk a little bit too about how clear messaging can help connect on that emotional level?
You just keyed in on it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the points I had here in my notes was you essentially validate the feelings and emotions of your buyer by stating your point of view, because if you've done it right and you've been honest and transparent and open, they're going to say, yeah, me too, or yeah, I believe that. It's interesting. I was on a call yesterday with a prospect, and he had recently read the book, and when we were talking on the phone, he was like, I feel like I've been thinking that way for 30 years.
No kidding.
And finally, I'm reading a book and it's saying what I'm feeling. That's the same level of clarity and connection and validation that you want to use through your website, which is essentially your initial vehicle of communication.
Yeah. And who doesn't like feeling validated?
Yeah.
That's a great feeling.
Yeah. You want to work with people who believe the same things that you believe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Especially after 30 years. He probably thought he was out on Lonely Island, like he was crazy or something. And then to have it all come together like that must have been a great moment.
Yeah. It was. And here's the specific example. He was saying that when prospects would reach out to him and ask for estimates, he would sit down with them and show them every single line item of that estimate and actually show them how much profit he was making on the job.
Wow.
Just an insane level of transparency and care.
Yeah, that's
to say, like, I'm not here to get rich. I'm here to build a business. These are my costs. You can either choose to go with me. I'm a little more expensive, but like, it's just that layer of thinking and clarity where he connected with the message of they ask, you answer.
Wow.
Right away.
I've never really heard that before. People that are like, it's one thing to show pricing and to be transparent about it, but then to show your actual, like what profit you're going to make or what your margins are. That's,
yeah, it's incredible. And hey, it's probably not right for every business, but sure, it's served him well for a long time, I guess.
Yeah.
So
do you have any other examples, or like, have you had any stories you could share about messaging once people get this right, what it does for their business?
Yeah, I think ultimately, more broadly, when you have that connection with a potential buyer, in most cases, they're going to become a better customer for you because they've already assimilated with your beliefs and your point of view. There's no convincing, there's no persuasion. Your messaging has done well to attract the right type of buyer. And so typically that means better customers, more retention, less fighting with them, maybe more referrals. I mean, it just has this cascading effect.
Yeah.
From employee to customer generation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because we talked about this a lot on the show, where getting the right leads, sometimes having less leads, but they're the right ones that are the most qualified, is better than having a pipeline full of people that you're going to have to strong arm and oversell, and then probably have problems with them down the road as they become clients because they're not really a good fit. And it's like, what's that time and energy worth versus taking the time to do what we're talking about to attract the right people?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a game changer. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. So for someone who's listening or who's watching and thinks their messaging might need a little work, so if you're out there right now and you're going like, I need to take a look at this, I need to figure this out, where should they start? What's some good advice, or some, like, what's the jumping off point for them to at least start to think about this and tackle this as they move forward?
2 key places to start, and they're resources, and
Nice.
They're very easy to get through. Number 1, read StoryBrand by Donald Miller. That'll clarify a whole bunch of stuff we talked about today, and obviously expand on that more and talk about the hero's journey, your customer's journey, through their brand with you.
And it's tactical too, because he really walks you through, like, it's not just theory. It's also like, and here's the step-by-step process to run through this for your business or your organization,
Yeah,
which
and
is
it
great.
just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And it's a good read.
Yeah.
So check out that book. The second thing I would say is follow Pep Laja, who, again, owner of CXL, Winter, and another company called Spiro. He has, not only is he fun to follow because he's just like a straightforward guy, but his B2B messaging framework, and what I love most about it, is it's based on tons of data that he's sort of reversed analyzed and built this framework. And I want to make sure I get it right. The framework is 5 steps: clarity, relevance, value, differentiation, and consideration.
Wow.
That is the order in which most B2B buyers are going to be looking for in their content. So if you go to Winter, WYNTER.com, he actually has a B2B messaging course on there that's, I think it's maybe an hour or so, but it'll get you up to speed. And now you have these 2 tools, again, which is where I live, kind of right in the middle of those 2 things and using bits and pieces from each one of them.
No, that's cool. I think that's good advice too, only because I feel like it's easier with B2C, or at least that's the perception. Because when we talk to B2B businesses, they're like, oh, what works with B2C doesn't work with B2B. And we're still, a handshake, and they do things maybe a little bit differently. And I don't know if that necessarily changes the equation with what we're talking about right now. I think if anything, the people that are in B2B that can leverage this right now are going to be a step ahead of their competition and people in their space.
And that's an interesting point too. A lot of what Endless Customers is a timeless set of principles that work across the board. For messaging specifically, when you look at these 2 groups, and we talked about emotional buying responses, B2B, you're still selling to a human, but at the same time, a lot of times their job is on the line, right? Like even if you're a CEO making a decision and you're buying something, you want to make sure that decision doesn't have a negative effect on your business or your employees or your customers or whatever.
Totally.
That's where the logic and emotion come together. With B2C buyers, a lot of times it's about identification. I identify with the product that I'm buying. Like, we'll take the guitar examples. The reasons why we buy Fenders and Gibsons and maybe spend a little bit too much money is we want that to be part of our identity. And so maybe the emotional component takes over a little bit more. So that's what I love about the B2B messaging framework that Pep has put together. Pep is PEEP, by the way.
Okay.
And Donald Miller's story written.
How does this come into play with AI and with artificial intelligence that is becoming predominantly the driving factor of where we are now and certainly into the future as we move forward? So how does that play into all this?
Yeah. When They Ask You Answer was originally released, 10 plus years ago, we didn't necessarily have this scenario. And Marcus always talks about, like, he could sit at his kitchen table and write a few blog articles and rank really well in search.
Right.
But now we've got dozens of AI tools that generate content from simple prompts, and the rate at which content is being produced is so much higher, and it's just creating more noise.
And I think at the time, I have to interject. The reason why I worked for Marcus back when he was doing the River Pools piece and was up all night blogging and started ranking was because that was a bleeding edge of when blogging was really becoming a thing, and Google and SEO and all that was really at its peak, and it worked out so well for him. And now there's this major shift that's happening where you can still stand out, even though that it might be oversaturated, but you have to figure out ways to do that, and you have to use AI to help you do that.
And you have to hope that your buyer is willing to scroll past the AI generated result, scroll past the Reddit results, scroll past
the YouTube
shopping
videos.
Results and YouTube videos to eventually find you. And so that brings in the importance of writing things that AI tools like ChatGPT can surface and recommend what you're putting out there. And again, these tools are not dumb. They're not just looking for specific words. They understand what their searchers are trying to find. And so that's where this idea of messaging and point of view and storytelling and IP becomes ever more important at this point, where you have to start infusing that into your content. Otherwise, people are going to look at your content and say, yeah, I'm reading the same thing over here. There's nothing here that's keeping me or engaging me or building more trust ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. There seems to be like this oversaturation in the marketplace, right? And it's becoming harder and harder to stand out. And Marcus talks about this a lot. Like whenever I'm like envisioning him on stage right now, talking about how to disrupt your industry, how to disrupt, your marketplace. And I feel like it's becoming harder to do that. So like going back to the messaging piece, how do you, like coming full circle here, how do you find a way to position yourself where you can disrupt and you can stand out from all this AI tech and all the noise?
Yeah, it's funny. We actually do an exercise around this at Impact Live, which happens twice a year. The next one's on August 18th to the 20th in Hartford, Connecticut. Hope we'll see you all there.
Nice.
I'll do the plug for you.
That was perfect. Nice.
Yeah. But there's an exercise in the workbook that Marcus runs us through, and it's a number of prompts that we ask that help to get you thinking this way and leaning more towards disruptive style content, which is going to move you to the top of search, is going to get you recommended in ways, and is going to be more shareable. And I think I won't know the question exactly, but the general basis of the question is, what's one thing in your industry that frustrates you that nobody's solved yet?
Or maybe that no one's talking about.
Or that nobody's talking about
That's
yet.
a good point. I love that.
And hey, for impact in our industry, it's this idea that digital marketing and content writing should be outsourced. And we're on the complete opposite end of that, of like, no, bring it in-house. The best results are with your team, and it creates enterprise value for your business.
Yeah.
So there's a number of prompts and questions like that you can use to help you generate ideas that are going to make you stand out.
Love that. This has been a great conversation. I love having you on the show. I feel like I could talk to you for like another hour about this stuff, but we should wrap up.
Okay.
So we get favorite part of the show. What's the one thing? If for everybody out there watching and listening, what should they take away from this conversation? What should they go get after right after watching this or listening to this?
Yeah, I think the one thing here is that it's incredibly hard to just sit down at your computer and write website copy or blog article copy or an ad or anything for your organization if you haven't yet established what your messaging is for your business, what you believe, what your point of view is, what your intellectual property is, and finding a way to clearly communicate that to your audience and have it shareable across the organization. That's the area to start.
Well said. Yeah. All right, everybody, you know what to do. So get after it. And Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course.
All right, for everybody out there watching and listening, you know what it is. This is Endless Customers. I'm your host, Alex Winter. We'll catch you on the next episode.